Hello everyone, I've already played quite a lot of Oracle Discipline Priest on the 12.1 PTR, and in this video I'll give you a brief overview of how the announced class changes actually affect the gameplay experience. Now, the community reaction towards changes seems to be predominantly negative, but I'll try taking a balanced look at what is actually headed our way, considering the good, the bad and the ugly alike. Let's begin by examining what is actually good about Discipline Priest in 12.1. First, and most importantly, Void Shield has received both a deterministic component in being activatable by casting Mind Blast, as well as a stronger planning component by enabling players to accumulate up to 2 stacks of the ability simultaneously. Consequently, the RNG-based nature of Discipline Priest gameplay has been substantially diminished, and the class is now quite potent at planning out anticipated burst damage events. In an ideal world, you are now able to counteract big expected damage by holding 2 Void Shield charges when it hits, as well as having Mind Blast off cooldown to immediately generate a third one. Thus, while Discipline Priests have previously struggled significantly with ramping up their healing to match high damage burst occasions in M+, they will likely become one of the stronger classes for delivering concentrated healing power over a short time window in Season 2. Beyond the planning aspects of the change, however, it also serves as an overall healing buff, because more Void Shields are going to be available than previously, even despite the fact that Penance now procs a Void Shield only at a 25% chance rather than the previous 33%. Having Mind Blast return to the fold as a meaningful part of the rotation is also a very welcome change, as the current version of the spell always felt somewhat underwhelming, basically only serving as a tool for proccing power of the dark side. Given that the Season 2 2-set bonus further incentivizes the interplay between Penance and Mind Blast by providing a cooldown reduction to the latter whenever casting the former, the overall rotation gains some additional interactivity, which is a good thing in my opinion. In addition, the Penance Mind Blast interaction is going to change how to optimally approach pulls. In Season 1, you nearly always wanted to begin pulls by casting Shadowed Pain into Penance to quickly spread the debuff around, but now the first global should arguably always be Mind Blast, so that your Penance follow-up will already get to work at reducing its cooldown. Therefore, the new optimal pull sequence is likely to be Mind Blast into Shadowed Pain into Penance. The only small gripe I have with the new version of Mind Blast is that its usage can become awkward in high damage phases when you would need to press it for proccing Void Shield, but can't afford to because the button press itself doesn't do any meaningful healing. However, while this can be frustrating, it also makes for a nice area of skill expression in high pressure situations. In addition to Void Shield and Mind Blast getting some love, Priests will also receive a 40% damage buff to Smite, although of course 40% of 0 is still 0, so the high number should not be overinterpreted. Moreover, Greater Smite is now a 1-point talent for some additional damage amplification to Smite, also serving as a way of extending active atonements via the Divine Procession talent that is required for picking up Greater Smite in the first place. That being said, the positioning of Greater Smite in the talent tree is still a bit awkward, and picking it up will likely require dialing back the Shadowed Pain driven playstyle even more, which I'm personally not super happy about, as I quite enjoyed the focus on spreading Shadowed Pain for maximizing your healing. Finally, if the buffs to Smite succeed at incentivizing its frequent usage, then Priests will be granted Surge of Light procs at a higher frequency, and those will also be easier to consume than in Season 1, as you no longer have to think about wasting a Shadowmant proc when consuming them, because, well, Shadowmant procs no longer exist. Speaking of Shadowmant then, we are moving into the bad section of Discipline Priest changes in Midnight Season 2. First, the nature of Shadowmant has changed entirely. Previously proccing from Shadowed Pain, the ability now replaces Flash Heal as the baseline heal, making it a stronger healing ability at a higher mana cost, and with a longer cast time due to Grim Deliverance. From my experience with it on the PTR, Shadowmant is still quite powerful, healing individual players for around, I would say, a third of their HP bar. Now, compared with the current version of Shadowmant, that may not seem like much, but keep in mind that this already incorporates the overall 20% healing nerf to all healers in Season 2. Now, I don't particularly enjoy the cast time increase of the ability, as needing to stand still for long periods of time for casting Shadowmant significantly detracts from the dynamism of the Disciplined Priest rotation, more strongly resembling Holy Paladin's Holy Light than Priest's Flash Heal. Moreover, Shadowmant is positioned as an atonement applicator due to Grim Deliverance, making it apply atonement at a 4-second increased duration. However, I think players should not get tricked into overusing Shadowmant because of its atonement application qualities and instead use it as rarely as necessary, as the ability costs a boatload of mana. Indeed, when purposely limiting Shadowmant usage while playing on the PTR, I have not run into any major mana issues yet. All in all then, the Shadowmant changes aren't terrible, but the ability has lost part of its identity, now relegated to being just another reasonably powerful heal with a cast time, instead of the absolute healing powerhouse it used to be in Season 1. Thus, having Shadowmant available all the time detracts from the depth of Disciplined Priest's toolkit, while concomitantly diminishing the power and importance of Shadow Pain, which was used to generate Shadowmant procs in Season 1. Finally, the one change Blizzard is making to Disciplined Priest that is a real miss for me is the fact that Penance no longer applies Atonement when cast at an ally. Now, Blizzard's rationale for implementing this change is that there is too much friction between casting Penance on allies that need healing, allies that need Atonement applied, and enemies you want to deal damage to. I mean, first of all, having a decision point when casting an ability is not a bad thing, so I think the justification is a bit lackluster in terms of explaining where they actually locate the problem with the spell. Additionally, the consequence of this change is that your options for applying Atonement to allies in Season 2 will be severely limited. For application to individual players, you will need to rely solely on Powered Shield/Void Shield, as well as Shadowmant. Or, of course, you can use Plea, but that's just the worst spell in the game to begin with, so it doesn't deserve to be recognized as a potential option. The problem with needing to rely on shields and Shadowmant for Atonement application is twofold. First, both abilities are a substantial mana drain, and they should therefore be used with measure rather than for the purposes of constant Atonement maintenance. Second, the constant need to cast shields at the behest of Atonement application reduces the newfound freedom of being able to keep Void Shield procs in the bank for big damage events, as Void Shield is becoming increasingly relegated to being an Atonement applicator. Unfortunately, Void Shield is also not super smart about doing that, as there is no easy way to determine which additional targets it will focus with its healing beyond your primary target. I think it's mostly driven by missing HP and not by remaining Atonement runtime, making planning Atonement reapplications via Void Shield more challenging. What it boils down to then is that Disciplined Priests will need to rely on Radiance more often for a global solution to Atonement maintenance. Now, this solution is workable, but Radiance itself is also a non-negligible mana drain. Generally, the loss of the cognitively engaging Atonement maintenance minigame, of which Penance was a central component, weighs heavily on the quality of Disciplined Priest's gameplay loop. Against popular opinion, however, I think that if Blizzard reverted the Penance change and therewith made Atonement management more, well, manageable, then the Disciplined Priest rotation actually plays out very nicely in Season 2, despite the doom and gloom that has been cast upon it by parts of the community. Now, if you want to see how these changes play out in a live gameplay commentary format, watch this video. Also, please let me know what you think about the changes and where your own major pain points lie. Like the video if you liked it, and please also consider subscribing to my new channel for more content like this. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and see ya.